Right. So I think it's time for us to start across with the presentation itself. I will now officially just introduce the topic of the webinar. As you can see on your screen, it is really about mastering the SAT, giving you a proper pathway along with strategies that should really help you across in understanding the overall topic of how important SAT is, how do you really tackle it, what are the important components behind it, and which all different geographies you can be typically using it along obviously giving you the proper information when it comes across to college board. Meanwhile, just as a repetition for the parents who joined us across later, please make sure to use the chat section for any Q&As that you would have, and I would be taking all of the questions right at the end of the session. During the presentation, I will not be able to look at the Q&A section itself. So if there are any questions or if there are any technical problems, you could always, highlight them to Usha, who has joined us across. And we are planning to conclude our presentation by 9:05 sharp. And there'll be a whole 60-minute understanding towards the whole topic of SAT preparation. Now, without further ado, let's move in to look and understand the roadmap for today's conversation. So we will be looking at the digital SAT framework, the scoring that has been introduced ever since it has gone digital, the various SAT sections that it has, and obviously going in detail with the two sections of maths and English section respectively. We'd also want to discuss the importance of SAT when we'll be looking at about SAT itself. From there, we will move across to a plan that we like to always share across to students who join us on these webinars, in which you could roughly create a study plan for yourself for achieving the SAT score that would put you into the college that you are really being ambitious on. Then we move across to our overall approach. How do we help students in the SAT section? How do our SAT diagnostics work? What's the strength of, why digital SAT lab? That's our own preparation model that we do have, helping students in preparing for this journey within SAT. And as we always do, we'll conclude the session after I share a good amount of resources with you. So that's the last part of our conversation for today. And these are the four things that we'll be largely looking across. Now, just to quickly move across before we do into SAT, I just want to give you a good understanding and an introduction about the organization that is conducting the event today. So Let's Unbound had begun with a complete focus on skill building, empowering elementary and middle school students with STEM, life skills, and mentorship. As these students then progressed to high school, they started to look out for college admissions guidance, and that's where we listened. We then moved on to evolve our services to seamlessly integrate the storytelling through applications into our well established mentoring programs. By combining personalized learning, skill development, and strategic admission support, we now cater and work with students right from early academic years, taking them in an ambitious way to a top global university. Today, we have impacted more than 4,000 students across 25 countries and delivering over 125,000 hours of mentoring. Our commitment to excellence has earned us a 4.9 out of 5 global rating. We have partnered, in the past with organizations as Harvard Students Agencies, Arizona University Prep Digital, ensuring that students receive a world-class educational experience. So that's a bit of an understanding about our organization. Let's Unbound. Now, just to give you a quick understanding over our founders, and on your left, you would look at Amol Patil. He's a serial entrepreneur and an education visionary with experiences with Tata Exceed, which is India's largest edtech platform. Amol has helped scale and impact educational solutions across 2000 and in 6 countries, impacting more than 250,000 students. He is known for his ability to blend business thinking on ground realities and has been instrumental in helping startups from IIT Bombay and beyond succeed in the whole education space. On your right, we have Professor Nishan Chawla, a mentor and educator, the brains behind many of the learning pathways that we share with our students. With 14 plus years of experience across academia, industry, he has counseled over 1,000 students and has designed curriculums right from K-12 to executive MBA programs. He's an alumnus of SP Jan, a top-rated teacher and a proud mentor of change under Atal Innovation Mission Niti Aayog. So that's a good introduction of the two people who have typically and have gone ahead and given the vision in which we work as an organization. Now, just to quickly run you through my own profile, I have been within the realms of admissions counseling for the last decade. And within that time period, I've also worked across within banking, finance, and and represented organizations at Citibank, Standard Charter. My first job out of post graduations was with Jaguar Land Rover. When it comes across to the education space, I have worked with Added Education, I've worked with Crimson Education. Both of them are international players with a very strong focus when it comes to admissions in your top three countries, be it USA, be it UK, be it Singapore. I've got a couple of students, who are currently studying in Canada, Australia, the whole larger Europe, beyond the UK country that I've just mentioned across on. Now, moving away from my introductions with the organization, now it's really time to talk about what are we really here to do today, and why does really SAT matter? One of those top questions. Even in a test optional world, a strong SAT score can be the real differentiation maker. Maybe one of those answers why it's very much important to pay focus on today's session. SAT can help you unlock scholarships. It can help you stand out in competitive applications. It shows to the college that you are ready for undergraduation academic rigor. The SAT, originally known as the Scholastic Aptitude Test, was first introduced in 1926. Over the years, it has evolved to better assess students' critical thinking, problem-solving skills. Today, the SAT remains a widely used college admission test, primarily for the United States, but also for a lot of universities worldwide. The College Board, a non-profit organization founded in the 1900s, administers the SAT. Its mission is to expand access to higher education by providing standardized assessments and resources for students. So beyond your SAT, College Board can also help you across in PSAT. It can help you in NMSQT. It can also help you within advanced placements. So advanced placement, just a quick information on it. It's a college level course and exams are done once in a year, in which you can also go ahead by doing these AP courses. You earn the college credits before you join on. But that's not the topic of discussion today. So we will be sticking to SAT, which will, play a very crucial role in your college admissions, offering students an opportunity to demonstrate their academic strengths. While many schools in today, as you would see, while I was talking about trying to show that demonstrate that academic strength, you should also do remember a lot of colleges in USA have adapted the strategy called the test optional policy, or even test blind in very specific cases. But having said this, a strong SAT score can still provide a competitive advantage if you look at the overall applications and not just focus on a couple of names, and predominantly all of those names that you would see going across as SAT optional. These are all those colleges which are in the state of California. I would, get into these description at a later stage, but just on that surface level, the moment COVID had started, the state of California had requested majority of the universities to really consider the SAT mandatory stage because of the access problem that COVID had caused in the year of 2020. But I would really urge everyone, and as you'll see in the sections moving forward, a lot of universities actually reverting back. So regardless of the point of being SAT blind or SAT optional, it is very important that you look at SAT. So this is the introduction I thought I'll just put across in terms of what are we looking in SAT, what is the College Board. Now that we have understood SAT's background and the changes that we have seen over the years, let's really move into that digital SAT framework, because the moment, after COVID, the whole SAT optional aspects that it happened, it has also made SAT to go digital. So now that's the next part of our conversation today, to look at the digitalization of SAT and how that framework has gone on to change. The digital SAT has been redesigned to make the test taking experience a more streamlined one, a more secure, focused on skills that truly matter for college and beyond. They also want to see the understanding a student is typically holding, not to understand what he doesn't know, which was one of those core problems that making the SAT digitalized has actually gone into solve. So it's not about giving the single paper to all students. For a lot of them, who find that mathematics a bit too difficult, All that those papers did reveal about the kid was what the kid did not know. The moment it has gone digitalized, now the whole question has come down to understanding what does the kid actually know about maths. So with that said, let's just move into a bit of those framework. The test lasts for 2 hours, 14 minutes. It is shorter than the previous paper-based version, but at the same time, it still consists of the same two sections: maths, covering algebra, advanced mathematic concepts, and data analysis. The other section, evidence-based reading and writing, it assesses your comprehension, grammar, reasoning, and analytical skills. The test is now administered online, making it a bit more efficient, accessible, while also improving security. One of the most important changes in the digital SAT is its shift away from memorization and towards the real world application of knowledge. So instead of just testing how well a student remembers formulas or grammar rules, the SAT now evaluates how well can you apply these concepts in different contexts, whether in problem solving, reading comprehension, or logical reasoning. The test is also adaptive, meaning the difficulty of the questions will be adjusted based on the student's performance. And that's that exact part that I was trying to put across to all of you guys. The SAT has moved away from testing the kids what they do not know, from actually testing what they do know. And that's where the whole adaptive thing comes in, where the paper is going to be shifted or changed looking at the strength of the student who's answering it. So anyone who doesn't perform well, for example, in stage one, stage two will make it a bit simpler. Once we move on to the next slide, you'll be able to envision this whole concept that I'm talking about, stage one and stage two. But since as the stage two becomes easier and the questioning and the testing becomes much more in the realms of the student's knowledge, it's much more easier for the admission officer to understand what does the student actually know, rather than having a result of just finding out that he does not know that advanced maths. Now that we have looked at the overall test structure, let's now move into the next most important topic. How does this SAT scoring work? And this is that stage when I'll be even showing you the stage one, stage two, and the adaptive scoring method and the examining thing that we have now seen typically function with SAT. Now, as you can see on your screen on the left side, there is this whole thing which is now being described where you've got stage one right on top, which is a mix of easy, medium, and hard questions, right? So the SAT, as I was just saying, will be then going down, and dependent on which side that you have been scoring, you'll be selecting an easier or a hard one. But that's just to explain you the graphics on the screen. Let's just go back and go in complete understanding of the SAT scoring itself. Now, since that we have looked over the digital SAT framework, one of the biggest changes, as I was just saying, with digital SAT is that adaptive testing that I was just explaining. The SAT is divided into two sections, with one being the reading and writing and the other being maths. And under both sections, you will have the two stages. However, everyone will start with the same stage of one, which will include a mix of easy, medium, and hard questions. As you perform in stage one, you would be either given one of the two different stages to perform on. If you perform well on stage one, you move on to harder stage two, which largely contains medium to hard questions. If you have a weaker performance in stage one, you will then move on to easier stage two, which contains mostly easy to medium questions. Now, this means that your performance in the first stage typically determines how your scoring range would also work. Why? Students who get placed in the harder stage two can achieve the highest possible score, which is up to 800 per section. Students that get placed into easier stage two will have a lower maximum possible score capped around 600 per section. So if you end up getting into easier stages in both maths and English, the maximum score that you could be typically looking across at would be a 1200. And if you're looking at a top 30, top 40 US university, getting a 1400 or 1450 is a bare minimum. So all of those students who are looking at a top university doing well in that stage one is actually step number one, and a very, very important step that all of everyone needs to take. Now, why does SAT use that adaptive testing? This system helps create a more accurate, and as I've been saying constantly, a more personalized assessment. while also making the test shorter and more efficient. Students who only answer questions suited to their skill levels. The test feels more tailored and avoids unnecessary repetition of either very easy or very difficult questions. So, the key takeaways for the SAT scoring is your performance in stage one is absolutely crucial if you're looking for a top university admission. Stage two difficulty will affect your final score range. Only those students who make it into the harder stages can get a score above your 1400s, above your 1500s, who are looking at those top institutes. The SAT score again remains out of 1600, 800, which goes into math, 800 that goes into reading and writing. So, one of those key and most important things that you need to get done is make sure that you're scoring very well in stage one to get into that highest possible range score. So that we've now seen how your digital SAT has come in and has affected the examination on its own. Let's move into a separate area in which we not now get into this proper number crunching. So I've just introduced you that SAT overall is 1600. It is divided into two parts, 800 and 800. One more quick information. You also do submit a super score at universities. So it's not about you submitting one attempt or two attempts. Even if you do three or four attempts, they'll take the best of your English, best of your maths, merge the two and give you the super score. So this is the overall understanding or the background that you need to have before we move into the number crunching and go into details of every different section and understand how that typically runs across. So just have a quick read, quick glance over all of those different numbers that you can see on the screen. And then now I'll just help you break this down. So as I was saying, the SAT is scored out of 1600. It has the two main sections, which both are in that range of 800, the maximum possible score. Each section contains two stages, as I've explained before, where stage one will basically determine which level of difficulty you get in stage two. Now, how many questions do you need to get right is a very intriguing thing that a lot of students have in their mind who are preparing. So each section has a total of 54 questions, right? Your final score is calculated on the number of correct answers, the raw score, converted into a scale score from 200 to 800 per section. So let's do a quick, amount of maths on time management. So the total test is around 2 hours, 14 minutes, which is 134 minutes. Now, how is the split done? You've got a reading and writing section, which is of 54 question. So that brings it down to 1.2 minutes or 72 seconds per question. When you move on to maths, you get 70 minutes for 44 questions. So now that's approximately 1.6 minutes or 96 seconds per question. So if you really think about it, if you take too long on a single difficult question, you are running this risk of, basically running out of time for the easier ones itself and running out of time to get that 1500, 1600 kind of a SAT score. Skipping and returning to a difficult question is a very important strategy that a student needs to understand if you're really looking to maximize your raw score. And also remember, because this is now a digital paper, skipping and before you skip, marking that question, skipping it and returning it back is, something that the system typically allows you to, master in the right way. And this is where I also do suggest to a lot of students that whenever you're doing your mocks from now on, it has to be on a digital platform, right? I'll be showcasing my platform as well. That will give you a good understanding of how these digital platforms work. But overall, you need to practice on a digital platform itself so you can go and understand all of that skipping and returning aspect. Now, how can you maximize your score? If you answer 40 out of 44 maths correctly, you're likely to be around the 750, 780 range. So within your 44 questions of maths, getting somewhere 40 is very important. If you get 48 out of 54 of your reading and writing questions, you're largely going to be within that range of 730, 760. With the combination of both these scores, you're going to easily cross across 1500, 1550. And that's the score range we would typically want our students to be in if you're really aiming for an Ivy League, if you're aiming for a top 10, top 20 US university or the top universities across the world. Sorry. Even if you miss a few hard questions, maintaining accuracy on medium difficult questions can also keep your score quite high. So beyond, just giving you that tips on how many number of questions you need to get done, just do make sure that you have kept that. Maintain accuracy on your medium difficulty questions to keep that score as high as possible. The final takeaway that I'd give across with this slide is that the SAT is not just about getting every question right. It's about strategical accuracy and time management. Prioritize easier and medium questions to ensure a higher raw score. Keep an eye on the clock, one of the most important things, and do not get stuck on a single question. Do remember 72 seconds for reading and writing, 96 seconds for mathematics. If you're spending too long on a single question, you're killing the opportunity for you to get a good score. Now that we have done the number crunching, let's now look at how do colleges interpret these scores and what a good SAT score really means. Right. So we get into that is one aspect that we would be then looking across at. Now, while doing so, what we need to do is need to understand it now section by section. So as I said, how do I optimize my scoring? Maths is one of those core areas where it becomes easier for you to manage because maths does allow you to get that 100%, 800 on 800 much more frequently than you would be seeing it in English. Now that you've understood this, how the SAT scoring works, let's now just specifically break down the math section in detail and understand the content distribution, which will help you to prioritize the topics and maximize your performance. The SAT math consists largely of four major content domains, and each carrying different weightages. Let's just go over them one by one. So the first two that you can see on your screen are algebra and geometry and trigonometry. Algebra, approximately 35% of this whole question paper, 13 to 15 question. Algebra would form, a large foundation of your SAT math question, which will include linear equations, linear functions, systems of two linear equations and their solutions. Since this domain covers about one third of the total questions, mastering linear equations and functions is really essential for that high score overall SAT and very specifically for that 800 portion of maths. Moving on to the other part, which is the geometry and trigonometry aspect, right? This is around 35%, 13 to 15 questions again, just like as you see in algebra. This domain also makes up another one third of the math section and focuses on your linear equalities, equivalent expressions, linear equations, systems of equations, trigonometry covering right triangles, and trigonometric functions. Many students find trigonometry and non-linear equations challenging, so dedicating extra practice time, for example, to any of these topics can be that exact beneficial thing that you need to be doing. Now, moving across to the next sections, for example, the first one, the advanced maths. This section would involve more complex mathematical concepts, including ratios, rates, proportional relationships, one variable, two variable data analysis, probability and statistics, including conditional probability and statistical claims. Along with that, you'll also have inference from data, including margin of error, observational studies. Now, since this section carries a lower weight compared to algebra and geometry, focus on mastering the fundamentals rather than overcomplicating the concept is a very important area when you're going to be looking across at advanced maths, which again has got 15% weightage in that overall SAT exam, and it has got 5 to 7 different questions that you would be typically handling. From there, you also do have the fourth section of problem solving and data analysis. Again, another function of 15%, 5 to 7 questions that you should be largely expecting. This section requires real world application of math skills. You'll be looking at things as area and volume calculations, lines, angles, triangles, right triangle trigonometry. And many of these problems would, really involve a lot of interpreting data, applying formulas, logical reasoning, analytical reasoning along with the same aspect. Now, the strategic takeaways that I want to give across with that whole math section is your algebra and geometry, trigonometry account approximately 70% for this math section. So focus most of your practice here. The advanced maths and problem solving contributes approximately 30%. So while they're important, but they should remain your secondary priorities. Do also remember one of the most important strategies that I would like to leave you across with is that time management is the most important key. For example, you have 70 questions for 44 questions. You should aim to solve one question in about 1.6 minutes, ensuring accuracy at the same time. So, mastering the most frequently tested concept will really help you to maximize your score efficiently. Now, I would like to move across to the other section within the SAT itself, the English part, which we call the reading and writing. Here's one place where I always do give students a lot of good leeway of not expecting a full Monty on this part of saying that you're going to get 800 out of 800. That's something what I'd rather expect from the math section, the stuff that you can see on your screen. Now, would just like to move across to the next part, which is looking at the reading and writing section. So I think the slide would have now changed across. Just have a quick glance over these various words, and then I will go into detail of explaining you this part. I'm just having a second break here. Right. So now that we have covered the math section, let's move on to the reading and writing section of the digital SAT. Now, just like maths, understanding the content breakdown really helps us to prioritize the study areas and maximize your score. The reading and writing section is designed to test your ability to analyze, interpret, and apply knowledge of the English language efficiently. It is divided into four key content domains, each contributing a specific percentage of the total score, exactly as I was just explaining you within the math section itself. Now, the first part that's extremely important, the craft and structure. 28% typically goes across here with 13 to 15 questions dedicated to craft and structure. This section focuses on how words, sentences, and passages are structured and how meaning is typically conveyed. The skills that would be tested here would be word and context, understanding how word choices affects meaning. Structure and purpose is a very important skill that is tested. It will be identifying why authors structure text in a very particular way. Lastly, cross-text connections, making connections between multiple passages. Since one-fourth of the section is typically dedicated to this, mastering the vocabulary and comprehension strategies is absolutely crucial to the 800 that is going to be dedicated to the reading and writing section. Now, moving to the second point, the information and ideas, approximately 26% weightage across the whole 100 of your 800 in English, spread across 12 to 14 questions. This domain is all about understanding the key ideas in the passage and analyzing, the supporting evidence. The skills that would be tested would be, the central ideas, the details, identifying the main points in the passage, command of the evidence. So example, you've got textual evidence, finding the direct support for answers, looking at quantitative evidence as well, interpreting the data presented in tables and charts and graphs, and then eventually creating your inferences, drawing conclusions based on the information given, which is on the two kinds of evidences that I spoke about, and from the central ideas and details where you will be drawing those conclusions. Since this section focuses on critical reading skills, students should practice skimming for key details and understanding the relationship between text and data. It is a very important part, but do remember it is not the most important part. The most important part does remain within craft and structure. Now, the third one, which is extremely crucial, the standard English conventions. This again has got a 26% weightage. You should be expecting anyway between 11 to 15 questions. The section would evaluate the grammar and the mechanics, testing your ability to write clearly and correctly. The focus areas would be the boundaries. So, for example, understanding punctuations, sentence fragments, and run-on sentences. Along with that, you've got form, structure, and sense. Correcting errors in sentences, construction, and usage. The section is rule-based, meaning that you can improve quickly by practicing a lot of grammar fundamentals. So the more rules that you're very strongly affiliated and do understand, it will really help you across in this section of the SAT. Now, lastly, within the reading and writing, you do also have a good importance that gets put across to expression of ideas. It has got a 20% weightage, and you'd have approximately 8 to 12 questions in this section itself. This would be really, this domain test your ability to improve the clarity and effectiveness and the organization of writing. The key areas that will be very important would be rhetorical synthesis, choosing the best way to combine information. You'll be also very importantly looking into transitions, enhancing flow between ideas and paragraphs. The section requires logical thinking, and improving in it involves a lot of analytical and writing for clarity and efficiency. Now, some of the key takeaways that I'll really put across would be that craft, structure, information, and ideas make up for more than 50% of this section within SAT. So focus on reading comprehension, and textual analysis. Secondly, grammar rules and punctuation contribute approximately 26%. So a very strong grasp of English conventions can really give you a quick boost in scores. Thirdly, time management is again key, as it was key within that English math section as well. You would have in here 64 minutes and 54 questions to get through, which means, you've again got approximately just 5.2 seconds to be answering all of those questions, which in those terms comes across to be at 72 seconds, right? So 1.2 minutes, 72 seconds is what you'll be typically aiming across while getting this section done properly. Now, do prioritize accuracy on easier questions first. Don't waste time overthinking the challenging ones. And that's exactly when you'll be missing out on those 1.2 minutes per questions or 72 seconds per questions that you need to be focusing. So now you've really gotten a good understanding so far in our session that we have done so far, in which we have looked at who conducts SAT, what is about, what's the importance of SAT in terms of examinations. We then moved over to the structure of the framework of SAT, how it's divided into two sections, what are the most important timing. We also did see the digital SAT framework per se, how, your stage one and stage two do get differentiated, and you'd have two different levels of stage two being differentiated from the easier stage to the harder stage, and all of that would be decided on how well you have done on stage one. We then moved on to go into extreme detail about the two sections within SAT. I've given you rough strategies as well on how many questions that you need to be attempting, how many need to get correct, and what is that score area that you should be typically be or performing under. Now, we would be moving on to the next part, which is to really get into detail of why is SAT such an important paper. Very much importantly, as well, as we've heard a lot of times with a lot of people telling us that there are colleges that SAT are becoming blind or they're becoming optional. But why does still SAT matters in college admissions is going to be the important part on this slide. Over the past years, many universities really adopted a test optional policy due to the pandemic, allowing students to apply without your SAT scores or even your ACT scores. However, this trend is shifting, and we are now seeing several top universities reinstituting the test requirements. So, for example, you got Harvard University, you got Dartmouth, you got Purdue, you got Brown University, Yale University. They've all gone back in either being SAT mandatory or SAT optional. Now, very interestingly, another institute in the state of California, the hub in which had made the decision to go SAT optional or SAT blind, the California Institute of Technology, or how you guys would normally know it as Caltech, is now gone back into SAT mandatory. They have all announced that the SAT or ACT score will once again be required for application. These universities argue that the standardized test scores provide valuable metric to assess the student in a very fair manner, and especially on the context of your global grades, in which there have been questions in various countries of grade inflation that can really give the admission officer, is the student ready for that academic rigor, and very specifically for the academic rigor that he may have to face while going towards a US college. Now, for example, John Hopkins University recently announced that it will now return to requiring standardized tests as part of the holistic admissions process. The announcement that now you can also see on the slide reflects this specific shift in their policy. Now, test optional still does remain in place. We were so far discussing about all of those universities that have made it a requirement. Now, those universities that have gone back in terms of SAT optional, it's Columbia University, Princeton has done it, Cornell, you've got Stanford University, you've got Pennsylvania, University of Pennsylvania, or UPenn, and University of Chicago, as they're normally called, UCs as well. This means that while SAT scores are not mandatory at these institutes, but a high score can still make your application that much more competitive. The test optional scenario students who submit strong scores can stand out amongst those applications who have actually not gone ahead and submitted. Now, why does SAT still matter? Even in a test optional world, the SAT remains a very important tool for students to demonstrate their academic potential. It helps to showcase skills beyond just the GPA, especially in schools or in boards where you have known this board to be inflating scores. Open scholarships and opportunities, as many merit-based scholarships still do consider SAT scores. It's very much fundamental for us to keep a very good eye and mind open towards doing as many as SAT attempts and making sure that we do end up with a good SAT score. Now, strategic SAT preparation remains very important, whether the test itself is optional or required, because today you haven't even decided which university that you're applying. And as I've said, that there's some universities that are still within that SAT mandatory aspect, and some have moved on to making it SAT optional. Now, I just want to give you a quick view over this university, and I've just split them into two different present slides themselves. This is one country that one university that everyone is always, let's say, interested at Harvard. Now, at Harvard University, you can see the kind of grades that the students need. Now, just for that explanation, the 25th percentile represents the students with the lower scores of the 75% admitted applicants. The 50th percentile represents the median score. Half of the admitted students scored above, half of the students scored below. The 75th percentile represents the highest score. Students in this range are in the 25% of the admitted applicants. Now, if you look at the Harvard SAT percentile scores, you will see that the 25th percentile SAT score is around SAT for your English reading and writing section, and 760 for your maths. The 50th percentile is around 760, 790. The 75th percentile is 780 and an 800 for maths. And that's why I've said all of those students who are looking at a really competitive university, getting 800 in maths is one of those primary requirements that we normally want to stress across. Now, if you look at the next option, the next slide that you would just see with Texas A&M, the 25th percentile composite score is around 1160, while the 75th percentile is again a 1380. And that was the part where you're saying it's so important for every student to make sure that they've gone ahead and done really well within that stage one. Because if you haven't done stage one, you're going to be stuck at 1200, and even a university as Texas A&M can become a bit of a challenge. So 1200 is that bare minimum that you should be typically aiming across. Now, score distribution, why does it mean? What does it really mean for you? At Harvard, nearly 92% of the students score between 700 to 800 in that SAT evidence-based reading and writing section, and 95% score between 700 to 800 in maths. This tells us that if you want to be in a competitive environment as a Ivy League school, aiming for at least 1500 is going to be a crucial fact. At Texas A&M, a more balanced score distribution has been seen. The more students falling between the range of 500, 699 range, making it accessible for students with score of, let's say, anywhere between say 640 to 710 in maths, and somewhere between 570 and 680 within your English reading and writing sections. Now, what can we learn from this data? Top universities expect high SAT scores, often 750 per section, to be in that top 25%. Mid-range universities accept a wider range of scores, but competitive scores still improve your admissions chances. If you're targeting scholarships or competitive programs, being in the 75th percentile or above significantly strengthens your application. Now, the final takeaways: know your target score, school's SAT percentile range. This really helps you to set realistic goals. If your score is closer to the 25th percentile, your application needs to have really strong profile messages, really strong essays and extracurriculars and recommendations to compensate for this overall weakness in the SAT section. Now, if your score is in the 75th percentile or higher, you have a strong academic advantage over the other applicants. With this data in mind, you should be in that right area to understand where you should be scoring. Now, just to give you a quick understanding, because we were talking about those various ranges of scores, just have a quick read over the top 10, top 20, top 30, top 40, and 50 institutes, looking at that retrospective SAT score that they should be aiming for. Right. So as you can see, even going all the way till the top 50 institute, having a 1400 plus score is something that's going to put you into that safety range. Even though you'll see, even for example, Texas A&M, there will be students accepted at 1200. There will be students accepted at 1180, 1190. But do remember, all of their profiles are extremely strong and go ahead and compensate for this weakness when it comes to your SAT score itself. Now, to quickly give you quick understanding of the India scope itself. So SAT is becoming a bridge between your Indian universities and US universities, and a bridge for those students who are trying to aim across both countries. So because of this fact, it's going to give you a globally valid score. It's going to really help you avoid multiple entrance exams in India, and it can replace the other testing formats as well, which are required for all of these, universities that have moved on to this section. So, you've got Ashoka, which is one of India's leading liberal art universities, known for its interdisciplinary approach to education. Flame University, which is a pioneer again of the liberal education in India. It offers programs right from business, humanities, and technology. Amity University in Noida, again, a well-known private institution, offering wide range of undergraduation programs and accepting the SAT score. Along with that, you've got Indian School of Business and Finance. We have Ahmedabad University, Prakasha University, Kriya, which is also very much famous for its liberal arts and science programs. And at the same time, you could look at the JASS Academy for Higher Education and Research, which is based in Mysuru, along with Indian Institute of Technology and Science, BITS Pilani. So all of these various universities have started to consider SAT while giving that admission. Now, why SAT? Why consider SAT for Indian universities? The alternative to national entrance exams, the SAT provides a globally recognized framework and benchmark, especially for students who may not be really preparing for those traditional and typical entrance exams of India, the joint entrance exam, the CUET, or any other entrance exams. It gives you more flexibility. So some universities do consider SAT scores along with your holistic application reviews, including personal statements and extracurriculars. Lastly, even within the India context, it gives you a good access to scholarship opportunities. Many of these institutes offer merit-based scholarships to students with a good SAT score. Right. So now that we have looked at, what is the scope of SAT score of India, let's try to look at a plan that could help you prepare and get a maximum score for yourself. Now, the steps that are extremely important of, targeting your kind of a SAT score. The first thing that you need to see is that how can you build up an effective SAT study plan to reach your target score? Now, preparing for SAT isn't just about studying hard. It's about studying smart. That means it means that you need to set clear goals and assess where you are currently standing. Choosing the right study method and tracking your progress consistently is going to do the trick. So first, you need to set a target score. List down potential schools. Make a list of 10 institutes that you want to apply. Make a list of 75 percentiles right across all of those institutes and see in which area that you need to be scoring. Do also look at, special requirements that there would be. For example, Georgetown University would require you to send all of their SAT scores. So while you're doing your targeting at this level, just do make sure that how many attempts that would you be doing? Are you applying to any of those universities where you need to show across all of your SAT attempts? Then you move across to assessing your current abilities. This is where product even from our side really becomes very important. Your SAT diagnostic. I'll be sharing the link at the end of the session today, where you'd be able to really understand where you're currently standing. So once you have done that, record your scores, identify the gaps, and then create a complete preparation method. Choose on your own and take a preparation course or join a group class or work with a tutor, but make sure that you are working on those gaps that you have just identified. Then create a prep strategy. One of the most important things that I'll put across, it is practice. Plan for at least 2 to 2.5 months to study before your first SAT attempts, bare minimum. Largely, we do suggest students to even put in 3 to 4 months of preparation, but we could only answer this on an individual level after we have done the SAT diagnostic. Schedule a lot of practice tests. At Let's Unbound, we make students do 20, 21 different, SAT preparations, where finally the SAT exam just becomes the 22nd. Fourth aspect, very important, do track the progress. Write down your study start date and official SAT test date. Monitor the progress by tracking your practice test scores over the time. And then overall, do make sure to refine your schedule very often than not to remove as many as weak areas. If your math score is lagging behind, always remember to dedicate extra time, as I was saying even at that time, to algebra, to problem solving, to data analysis and questions. Lastly, do go out and seek as much as additional support possible. The more knowledge that you'll be getting is going to be shared across to you by people who have gone through this, who have got some experience. You will be getting in much more stronger places. Now, just do make sure that you have kept a very strong, deadline of these examinations. But now, before we look into those deadlines, I just want you to have a quick look over the SAT checkpoints and milestones. And that was that one thing that I'd said, that we'd be even looking this in terms for those students who have just concluded across in grade 10, right? That's the whole idea. So you would be then putting across your exam in November of, let's say, 2026. And by this time of your registration should happen October 2026, and preparations would be starting from July. The second SAT attempt could come across in January of 2027, and the last attempt would happen in the March of 2027, which is all for those students who are applying next year. Now, quickly moving across to our approach, and this is that stage that I want to give you a good understanding in terms of what is our digital SAT lab. We start with the diagnostic phase, where we, give the student a complete, understanding of how well they are able to score on their SAT examination, dependent on the skills that they have. Now, just for all of you guys to, just use this platform itself, just give me 1 second more. I'm going to drop it on to the chat section. You can use this link to get a SAT diagnostic done for your kid as soon as possible, and we will give you the whole analysis of where your student typically does stand. Now, moving across from there, we'll give you a personalized study plan and help you understand where are your weakness areas, how do you need to come over them. We then move over to that one-on-one live tutoring with the best kind of mentors. We provide you exclusive strategy sessions as well. And just repeating that point again, in terms of that, we give students approximately 21 mock tests, where the final mock test, the 22nd one, is just going to become a natural test on its own. Now, the three most important pillars that we always do believe about, high stakes entrance exams, it's accuracy, it's speed, and it's exam strategy and stamina. One of the most core concepts that you need to really put across is practice. Practice as much as possible. Almost the quote of Bruce Lee comes into my mind. I fear not the person who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick, but 10,000 times. So it's very important that you go ahead and put in as many as hours and, work that is required in practice that will really get you ready in this right way. So it is a 2 hour, 14-minute paper. It is going to be time crunching, and it is still a marathon on its nature, since that you have to sit 2 hours, 14 minutes in complete focus of this. Now, your diagnostic that will be conducted will get you back a result in this manner, in which we'll really break down the way that you have attempted this paper. We'll be breaking it down into two sections: the total questions that you have really attempted, what was the time that you took to attempt them, and how many you got correct, how many of you got wrong. And we will not just do this on section wise, we will actually go within the section itself and do this topic by topic, understand how many correct questions, how many incorrect questions, how many did you skip, and across all three categories of correct, incorrect, and skip, how long did you take before you arrived at this conclusion? And we do them at exactly the topics that you see within the common application. Now, these are the topics that you look in maths, and the same concepts again remains the same, that we'll be looking and giving you an answer over the amount of correct questions that you have had, the incorrect questions, and the ones that you've skipped, and at the same time, the time that was required to get to one of those conclusions. Now, why digital SAT prep? One of the most important things that I feel which is really good, it is the personalized attention, the three-tiered preparation, in which we don't just start with the most difficult questions first. We really analyze the strength of the student and then create a whole roadmap from them. We've got decades of research and decades of us working with students on the SAT preparation, which we bring on board and help students to get through with this whole aspect. Our digital SAT web portal also does give you the right kind of simulation which is going to be required for you to be doing this digital SAT examination. Right. Now, just moving across to show you, the plan that we typically do put across to students, where we give 90 hours of foundation prep, strategy, and live mocks, which is divided 45% of contact hours of live tutoring, along with 25 hours of self-learning through practice sheets, and, which is also divided into various sections. Along with that, you'll also have 60 hours of mock tests, which is approximately 20 to 21 mock tests that we'll be doing for you. And then eventually you'll be moving on to your main exam. And we will help you to master the tech tools, which is the Desmos and the GDC. So you'll be getting complete support in that aspect itself. Now, beyond SAT, these are the other products that we typically do work and master in. And as I've said, we work with students right from the elementary school to high school, covering every aspect of admissions. Now, just to show you a couple of success stories of students who have, personally worked with and have gotten the right kind of a SAT score. We worked with this kid who had, a SAT score of 1200, and he had reached us just 2 months before the October 2024 exam while handling his common application submissions as well. The student was struggling with time management, with issues around reading and writing. He needed support in graphic calculator and, the algebra using of Desmos. We gave him that right kind of support, and eventually the student had an improvement of at least 150 points and reached 1340 all within just 60 days. Now, this is another example of a student that moved across from 1300 to 1540 by overcoming speed and stamina challenges. And that's also one other example that I'd like to put across for you. Now, beyond just the SAT example, this is a journey of a student who went into Dartmouth that I had personally worked with. He had a SAT score of 1550, did fantastically well in creating a complete essay competition at Oxford, and he thrived at national level basketball sports, founded an NGO, talented solo singer, and performed at various charity events. And his strong profile and accomplishment really earned him that high place in the Ivy League Institute of Dartmouth University. This is another example of a student who went across to Rice University. She rose from the ranks of school prefect to house captain, becoming the chairperson of the Model United Nations, and then eventually applied to Rice University, and where she was really encouraged to pursue a scholarship in the Women in Leadership category. Right now, just giving you to the last part of our session now, leaving you with a lot of resources. So these are the top master classes sessions that I do constantly do hold. Last weekend, we had gone into extreme detail about your Olympiads. The next weekend, we'll be going into a different topic around common application or UK or international admissions. So do constantly join us across on these various platforms. Along with our webinars, we do also put across a lot of College Crest newsletters. Now, the whole idea is, again, the verbal things that I've left you now with are also recorded and put across as a newsletter in itself. And you could access it by, accessing the screen QR code at the bottom of the screen. Now, you could also join across this podcast and this community of WhatsApp, just to be along the same kind of peers with you who are preparing for admissions abroad. We do also have the SAT diagnostic on offer, and you could just immediately go into your chat section. We have also dropped the question, the link itself for you to access it. At the same time, do make sure that you can, let's say, connect to this QR code in which we could give you a complete understanding about admissions abroad. Right. So this is what I'd exactly planned for my session. 55 minutes of the presentation and the last 5 minutes left across for the various questions that you may have. So I'm just now going to be accessing the chat section and seeing the questions that you have posted for me, and I will be able to take it through. So I've seen one person just needs another explanation of the digital SAT itself. So just give me 1 minute. I'll just go back to that SAT slide and you'll be able to understand the different differentiation. So all students would be introduced to stage one in maths and English both. So for example, I just use maths as an example. Stage one maths, you'll have a mix of easy, medium, and hard question, which will then be converted over to either giving you an option of easier stage two or hard stage two. The way it's going to be happening is if you perform well on stage one, you will be put into hard stage two. If you perform bad in this space, you'll go to earlier stage two, easier stage two. Now, why does this happen? Students who go into harder stage get a better range of score. On the easier side, will have a lesser amount of scoring. So I hope that helps students to understand that part. Now, I'm just waiting for other questions as well. What are any queries that you would be having? If there are none, we would then conclude the session. Right. So I'm just waiting for a few more questions. If there are any questions for me to take across, I'll just take them now. Otherwise, I'll just request all of you to scan the QR code on your screen and you could join us across for a one-on-one session where I'll give you all of this information specifically for your student in care. Right. So I don't believe there are any other questions for today. I am concluding the session. I'm stopping the share. So if anyone who still wants to take a QR code, you've got the next couple of seconds to do so. And in the next few seconds, I will now be stopping the QR. I think we have a question from Shrikant. Shrikant, I'm waiting for your question. So if it's not a question, if it's a QR code, you could just take that QR code scan. Now, just to also give you another opportunity at the SAT diagnostic QR, anyone who's had missed that out, you do also remember there's a link on the chat section you could use and you could go to the same SAT diagnostic. This is for the podcast and the WhatsApp group. This is specifically for your newsletters. And as I did it for your SAT diagnostic, I'm also just dropping the link for the newsletters onto the chat section. You could also just pick it up from there. Right. So that's if you just take the QR for the newsletter. And now this is your last again opportunity for the WhatsApp community and your IVs, SAT diagnostic, and the last one. Right. Thank you. So I'm now concluding the session for today. We'll be connecting again next week. If you've been able to take even one of the QR codes, you'll be able to get in contact with us and we will help you in this journey. Thank you for joining us across today and hoping to see a lot of you in the coming webinars. Thank you.